is time for a brand new podcast here on the Woah Nellie Productions Podcast Network, I guess what we can call it. I don't know. Work in progress. Just like the title of this podcast, which we have just been arguing over. However, we're going to just call it Shelf Hangin'. It's an inside joke that, if 5 people will get it, it'll be great. I am Woah Nellie, the guy behind Woah Nellie Productions. I will be kind of like the background host guy. This isn't really my show. It's a show of 2 second-generation people in the racing industry, and I will introduce them now. And they can talk about whatever the hell they want to talk about themselves, but it'll be with Jesse Isadore, who is son of Rick Isadore, who is, as I just get wrecked in iRacing. I should really just record
I would like to point out how Daniel's been hanging out with me for months and he doesn't know that my name is Isadore, dude. I would like to point that out real quick.
So anyways, Jesse
Isadore.
Eisenhower,
There we
second
go.
generation driver of Rick Eisenhower or whatever. Back in the day, was a pretty badass dude.
Old Jeffy Eisendorf, dude.
Yes.
There we go. Jeffy Eisendorf.
And this is gonna be funny as hell when I say this, is his co-host or the other guy in the podcast, because I will be the director of fun here. And these guys will just talk for my amusement or whatever this podcast is going to be. Is Jason Fanton. His father is, and I'm blanking on his name. This is awful. Ike Fanton, dude.
You are a terrible friend. And you are just terrible.
You know, you don't even know your co-photographer's father's name.
Yeah, it's Evie's dad.
There you go. That works.
It's Mr. Evie's dad, Mr. Jason's dad. So hey, let's get into some topics here. Or do you guys want to go on about your guys' background, what you guys are doing now? I mean, the more the merrier, I guess. So maybe people know who you guys are, other than Jesse, the guy that I make the entire internet mad at him, and Jason. I don't know.
Specialty.
I just exist, dude.
Yeah, I mean, so my name's Jesse Isadore. Is-a-door is my name. Is-a-door. Not Isadore, not Eisenhower, not Eisendor, not Eisendork. My name is Jesse, not Jeff. Okay? But anyways, I'm a second generation race car driver. You probably wouldn't have known that 2 years ago. I just recently started racing a mini late model. And my dad is Rick Isadore, and he's like a local racing, I guess, legend. So, and I've been hanging out with these mouth breathers for a minute. So, here we are.
Oh. All right. So, I guess I'm Jason Fanton. I mean, technically, I'm third generation involved with racing. My grandfather, he's owned stuff since, the dawn of the days of dirt racing. We've got pictures of him owning a 1948 Mercury coupe that they raced at like Angelica Fairgrounds and around the Twin Tiers and whatnot. And then my father, Ike Fanton, he used to race super late models back in the day with Jesse's father around McKean County, Bradford and whatnot. And, and now I don't race, but as we've discussed, I'm the wrench. I go to the track and I get dirty underneath the cars when I'm allowed to.
All right. I don't need an introduction. It's my Facebook, YouTube channel, so that'll be good. So let's get into the first topic, which I think is a something that I don't know. This weekend I was thinking about, and I kind of come at it from the perspective of behind the scenes media guy, but we are sitting in an era where I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, where it's more about marketing in motorsports now. Not so much the on-track product as if you can make people believe that this is where we need to be. And I think, when we're all racetracks around us trying to fight for the attention of everybody around there. You can kind of take it to our local scene, local dirt racing, and even on the larger scale. And my example is going to be F1 is marketed as this end all be all. They're getting all these viewers, yet the on track product sucks. And yet you have like NASCAR being probably the most entertaining it has been in 20 years. Yet
right.
they're battling in the ratings. And I mean, you could kind of take that with some local tracks. So I thought what your guys' opinions on it is.
So, like, I think first and foremost, like, so our sponsor or our sport in general doesn't really exist without sponsors, right?
100%.
And I can't really speak to F1. I don't know much about it. I barely know anything about NASCAR, let alone F1. But I know even in the dirt racing world, so I follow a guy on YouTube named Dirt Tracker Daily, and he broke down the finances of like a Lucas Oil team, I believe it was. And he did sprint cars and late models. So like I think the numbers, and I'm probably going to butcher this because I'm like referencing it off the cuff. I think he said like he took like guys in the top 10 in points. So guys that weren't slouches, right? And he took just their race winnings. So like without the oddball year, like when Jonathan Davenport made $2 million in a year, or
yes, sir.
with when Ricky Thornton made like $2 million in a year, right? So if you take those peak high years out of it, so they were averaging it like they were making about 303 to 400,000 a year, and they were spending like 4 to 500,000 a year. So without sponsors, even the guys at the highest level are kind of up shit creek without a paddle, right? So even at the highest level, racing for the most money and doing the dang thing, it's still really tough to make ends meet in this sport. So I think marketing in general has shifted wholesale, and feel free to interrupt me at any point, right? So you can go to school now and just get a marketing degree.
It's a big program that a lot of students take.
Yeah, you can go to school now, get a marketing degree, learn how to target ads, and learn how to sell a product, right? So the industry, as far as like marketing and advertising, is just flat out more competitive now than it ever has been. I mean, so that kind of rolls over into our sport, right? Where you're going to have more people fighting for the same amount of real estate, and there's fewer sponsors than ever that want to take a gamble on a racing team, let alone a dirt oval racing team, right? So we're absolutely all fighting over the exact same piece of real estate. Every local racetrack. I mean, you go to a local racetrack and you see like the same 10 sponsors on every race car, right? And there's probably a handful of individual sponsors to each race car, but I mean, you see the same logos over and over and over and over again, right?
They're the heart of the sport.
Yeah. And without those people, those same 10 people that are just pouring their time and money into the sport, I mean, who knows how much of the sport just flat out doesn't exist, because the barrier to entry is really expensive on most of these classes.
Well, and you saying the barrier to entry, the whole marketing thing has completely consumed the sport. As you get higher into the sport, the barrier to entry is even greater. If you look, and we can use this F1 as an example, and we can even use NASCAR as an example. Many of the drivers are pay to race, so they have these marketing partners,
right.
And NASCAR, especially with some of the junior motorsports drivers, some of those guys have to bring $8-9 million a year through their marketing partners in order to even secure a ride. And then, like, if you look at the F1 scene, Lance Stroll, his father owns Aston Martin, acquired it. His father owns Aston Martin Racing Team. He's one of those people that essentially really, I mean, yeah, he can drive a car, but at the end of the day, no, not necessarily at that level, but because he has this backing of finances through this grand marketing scheme, he's competing at what is, Daniel just said, the highest level that, you know, draws so much money. And then then you break down the marketing of Formula One. If you look at some of the prices of some of the events that just went on at Miami, it was like $200 to get a hot dog at the racetrack for the event. But because it's marketed as this grand, incredible event, you're
like
expected that you're paying it. So then the upcharge is so much. But, you know, and then back at our dirt level, you know, local level, let's talk local level here first. But, you know, some people at the local level are using tires over and over because they don't have these marketing partners. And one of the basic things that some people are doing is going, hey, you know, I want to come to you as a marketing partner. I'm not going to ask you as a broad thing, but will you sponsor my right rear tire? I can do this, and this is how you're benefiting me. You are driving me on this tire.
Oh,
You know, some of the racing that I'm around now competitively down here in the South, the Steel Black Bandit series, which is a limited late model series, unbelievably competitive. There's no way some of these guys could do it without marketing partners. I mean, we're talking what used to be, you know, limited, you know, supposed to be the slower, lesser class. I mean, there's guys that they're trying to find finances to pay $40,000 for a steel black motor, not a super late model motor, but a 364 cubic inch or less motor with a cast block, you know, not even aluminum block. So the marketing that you do, whether it's a series, because, you know, I love the series we're working with. They've got some really good partners, Penske shocks, you know, Vision wheels, some of the other ones that they've got. With it, they're able to bring in, you know, if you finish such and such with whatever package, you're getting $100 a race for such and such thing presented by these sponsors. So the marketing is able to drive us that way. But gosh, I mean, to really drive the sport anymore, it's really how much you can partner with somebody that's willing to spend the money.
Well, and here's how much it's changed, right? So I remember in the, like, let's say the late 90s, early 2000s, when my dad was racing full time, like the general consensus among the drivers was like, people sponsor the race car because it's great advertising, right?
Right.
And people, like, back then, I mean, obviously back then people were doing marketing for a living, right? But we didn't have targeted ads on Facebook. We didn't have YouTube ads. We didn't have, I mean, none of this stuff really existed. I mean, and if they did exist, they were in their infancy, right?
Well, a lot of your older marketing at the racetrack was somebody bought a program at the event, and I can always remember going, oh, look, you know, McKean County, look, Wellsville sponsored Napa, or Current Controls, or what's the diner there on Main Street? Modern Diner, you know, 3 sponsors like that from Wellsville sponsoring the track down there. And that was one of the things I always remembered.
Right. Well, and also too, like, so with all those changes and with the difference between then and now, right? The focus has shifted from people jumping at sponsoring race cars to the race car driver being in a more subservient role to the sponsor. So, like, we have a situation now where it's like, if you get a good sponsor, you really should go out of your way to make your sponsorship with them worth it to them, because
absolutely,
make no mistake, if a race car, like if somebody sponsors your race car, let's say $1,000, right, they could get way more out of that $1,000 with paying a guy an extra $200 or whatever to run ads on the internet for, like, targeted ads, search engine optimized ads, so that every time somebody even thinks about whatever service you provide, bam, it's in an ad. You know what I mean? Whether it be on Google, Facebook, YouTube, I mean, you name it.
And sometimes there are subliminal ad too.
Right. And their money goes way further on the internet now. So now it's like a sponsorship of passion, right? So the sponsors that we have now are people who live and die by the sport, whether it be dirt oval, NASCAR, whatever. We need them all for the sports to go around, right? And I mean, and at the highest levels, so maybe with World of Outlaws and NASCAR and F1, maybe those sponsors are sincerely getting a lot out of their money, and they might be, but I suspect that it's a sponsorship of passion, it's a sponsorship of prestige, and I have a feeling
you just killed it with the prestige thing.
Yeah,
and if you look at the Formula One, it is prestige. It's look at me, I can flaunt where my money is now, and look what I've got and look what you don't.
Yeah, and it's also a tax write-off, and that's just an added
there's
benefit.
So many, and there's high-level dirt racing teams that big sponsors are tax write-offs. I mean,
right?
They're whether or
That's
just
my dog, by the way, if
money movement in ways, I guess would be a good way to say it.
Right.
Maybe some not always as clean, because sometimes you hear rumors on where some of the money may be coming from.
Yeah. Well, there's every racing scene has that one sponsor that everybody's heard is a drug dealer. So,
I mean,
you know what I mean?
To pivot this away from sponsorship dollars, I'm talking about more eyeballs on the sport and butts and seats, because at the local level, in our area, Jason, you're down south, so you experience that sweet streaming dollars at some of your tracks.
No, brother.
A couple of them, right?
I mean, we've been at events that have been streamed, but no, not too well.
So,
but
up here, at the dirt ovals, of course, that sponsorship money is helpful, but for the racetrack and to get fans and seats, I'm almost thinking it's kind of the same situation that we're looking at here as maybe viewers of series and stuff about how do we, is it the hype? Is it the prestige? Say, and this isn't, not the name drop or anything, but like there's a lot of racetracks up here that have the name value. There's always hundreds of cars in the pits. There's
absolutely
hundreds of people in the stands.
The prestige thing is so much of that, and like Formula One is your example. I think that's the biggest draw, is that it is this prestige. It's supposed to be this highest level Formula One, the utmost science in the race car. So with this prestige, there's more eyes. Yeah, the Netflix series brought some eyes, but there's always been this European interest in it, because this is the ultimate goal. But at the lower levels, I'll think of one track that in New York State, that not quite local to where we're all from, but we're talking streaming. Utica Rome, they're weekly streamed on Flow Racing now. So there's this prestige there. So more people tend to at least lay eyes on it, whether it's physically in the stands, which I've been to the track, thoroughly enjoyed my visit there. But you go to a Bradford or Woodhall or something, those are tracks now that depend on people to actually physically be there. The track depends on ticket sales, depends on all the concessions and everything in that manner. But I just it's a big factor in the prestige.
So like we were talking about eyeballs on the sport, and but you brought in sponsors too, so like they're kind of inseparable, right? Because like the eyeballs in the sport dictate what sponsors you have, right? And I think there's kind of two factors. I think if you were to do the math, I mean, I don't really have any data to back this up. I have a feeling if you were to go back and compare NASCAR in 1991 to NASCAR now, or even F1 in 1991 to F1 now, I bet you there's probably a tenth or half of the viewership now. It's way less.
Well, look,
I almost guarantee
so much so. I mean, and it's so dramatic that the NASCAR tracks have even just started removing the grandstands so it don't look like they have empty seats.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily that there's no interest. I think it's just like everything else that the internet kills, right? People love racing. They just love YouTube videos of it. They love racing, but they like the highlight clips on TikTok.
So
right?
I'll give you a great example of myself. I enjoy drifting. I mean, I've never been to a drift event, but man, on YouTube, I watch a lot of drift stuff.
Right.
Again, so it goes exactly with what you're saying. You know, whether it's, you know, it started with like Hunt the Front vlog or one of the others, it has drawn eyes to the sport in some way, but those eyes are still on screens instead of in person.
Well, and I mean, I think the way that dirt track evolves is they've got to take the musical route. Like when Spotify and Napster and all these things became obvious that you couldn't avoid it anymore, right? Album sales were dying. People were going to take that music whether you wanted it or not. You might as well make what you can make off of it, right? There was also a big correlation with people stopping coming to shows and stuff because the value of the product goes down. The intrigue of going to the event also goes down. It's just like an unhealthy byproduct, right? And that doesn't feel good to hear, but you got to start looking at eyeballs are all good eyeballs, whether they're attached to dollar signs or not, right? So we were talking about prestige, and I think I think a lot of people have misconceptions of like Flow and what's the other one, Dirt Vision. So like these tracks that are streamed weekly at these places. I've heard the argument that, you know, people are watching on TV, they're not spending money at the track, right? And that's true. That is true. But the problem is, right, so like you can either fade into obscurity because people don't know your track exists, or you can collect every butt in the seat that you can because of the streaming. Because like, so if Bradford was streamed on Flow Racing for weekly tomorrow, right?
Right.
I think it would be a net positive. You're still going to have the loyals, right? You're still going to have the people that are there every week because they have a brother, cousin, sister, uncle, whatever racing. And you're going to have a whole new audience that, whether they're local or not, I mean, certain people like different tracks. Some people like big, wide open racetracks. Some people like small bull ring racetracks. And there's a handful of people that are going to watch that broadcast every week and think this track is cool as shit. You know, I mean, people, I think, make the mistake of thinking that if you don't have an Eldora sized complex, like this giant motorsports facility, I think people make the mistake of thinking that, well, why would I want it on TV if it's not this big, beautiful facility? But like, I prefer those weird hole in the wall, like bull ring racetracks, you know?
Look at one of we have a great example of one of those tracks right now. And it's super popular with Flow, with multiple different series. If you look at Fairbury, it's kind of this little bull ring that requires you to either bang the fence or figure out how to go really slow against the bottom. But it's this quarter-mile track. But yeah, it's got this great facility, but it's got this atmosphere. But what really draws it is the kind of wild races it provides because of the size and the shape of it.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I think I've heard a lot of people that run racetracks, and it, you know, I understand where they're coming from too, because like if people can just watch at home, that's a real fear, right? Because you really need every dollar you can get, because racetracks are really high risk and sometimes they're really high reward, but I think much more than not they're just high risk, right? So like if you have, say, 5 classes racing and you're paying out everybody in all the classes, I mean, it might cost you between paying all the people to work there, between all the money you're going to spend on food. You're going to make money on food too, but you're going to throw a lot away. You're going to lose money. I mean, I bet you they're spending 10 to 50 grand a week, depending on the size of the racetrack, depending on the crowd, the facility. You know what I mean? Like, I'll bet you a place like Eldora can probably make $100,000 a weekend, or maybe more than that, maybe twice that. I don't know.
On the upcoming weekends next month, their concessions are going to roll the money in for the Dream and whatnot. And
right.
Yeah, Tony Stewart invests a lot of money in it, but the investment then turns itself around and brings the money in to allow for the large races.
Right.
But if we want to talk another way, where people have put this investment in, and you say it's a risk, West Virginia Motor Speedway, it's set vacant for a while. These people come in, they bought the property, they renovated it, and they race for less than a year.
Right.
And now it's for sale and dormant again.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like it's very high risk, high reward, like we were saying. And it's a giant gamble when you spend all this money on a facility, because if you have a $500,000 facility, you're paying, I don't know, what is that a month? 10 grand a month to operate it.
Oh,
and then
gosh,
on top of
I
that,
don't even want to know.
You're paying everybody out every weekend, right?
You got to pay. Well, and you got to pay your help. You got to pay the electric bill. And one of the biggest killers right now on racetracks is paying your insurance.
Right. Exactly. And, I mean, all of this stuff is a factor, and people will sit there and count all the money coming in at the gate, and they'll be like, that's $40. That's $40. He just made $2,000 right there. And you're probably right. They probably did just make $2,000 right there, but they probably spent $5 to get there. You know what I mean? It's I don't think that running a racetrack is an easy business by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And I think if you do it correctly, so I feel like part of the key ingredients to getting butts in the seats, getting sponsors on board, and I think, so I remember in the 90s, right, when we were all going to McKean every week, they had people coming into the stands and hucking t-shirts up. There was 50/50s all night. I think at one point they used
was always so big.
Yeah, it was huge. And then they had, I think at one point they had like bingo for the like moms and sisters and stuff down in the little down, what do you call that little shed there? Like, I mean, it was a whole event, right?
Or
it was that little shed over there, like on the, like over by the entrance, where they had the pictures for sale and the concessions and all that.
So they had the white building that had where you bought your ticket to get in, and then you could get the program. And then the further building down was actually the concessions.
Right. And I mean, I feel like they had like a straight up event going on, right? And they didn't care why you were there or what you were spending your money on, just that you were doing it, right? And the little kids were all excited because I remember at intermission, like all the kids were fighting over the t-shirts, and like it was a whole thing, right? And there's like a whole industry built around it. There was people selling die-cast cars. There was merch tents everywhere. I mean, it was like it's almost like going to a music festival, It was a whole thing. And I think a lot of our local promoters are doing as much as they can, and I think they're giving a ton to the sport. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying it was done better back then, but I do feel like there's something to be said about things just flat ass being an event. Like every little thing that you add to the production throughout the night to break up the monotony, right? So look at every segment of the race. So like at intermission, the general consensus is intermissions where everybody goes to go to the bathroom, everybody goes to get food, all that stuff, right? And you still want them to do that stuff because that stuff is all going to make you money. If they go to the bathroom, they got to walk by the concession stand. If they walk by the concession stand, they might buy something. All that's money for you, right? But also, too, the kids might get bored in between, and if your kids aren't having fun, the chances of you coming back are slim to none, right? So like if you take that intermission and you take the opportunity to huck t-shirts into the stands and take that opportunity to like do fun events.
I've got a great example of something during the intermission that the series we tour with does. So during intermission, it is mandatory for the drivers on tour to participate in an autograph session up by the grandstands.
Right.
You know, the tour sets up, they have a trailer, merchandise trailer that they set up. They set up tables. So you have the 11 drivers with, you know, we take a hero card and Sharpie. So the kids have an opportunity to exactly like you're talking, engage the kids. The kids have an opportunity going, hey, that's the person that drives that car, and now I have a picture of their car with their autograph that they just gave me. Wow, I kind of like this even more.
And that costs you virtually no money. It doesn't make you a ton of money, but what it does is it guarantees a percentage of those people are going to come back, right? Because at the end of the day, if you can hook people's kids, you have a customer for a while, right?
Oh yeah.
And if the kids have fun, the parents will just go do it, because a lot of parents are just looking for a way to get their kid out of the damn house. You know,
getting them.
How do I get Timmy off YouTube? You know, so I think that I don't know. I personally think that I don't know. I would like to see the races be the thing again. And I don't know how much of that is me like wishful thinking though, because racing is a lot to compete with now. I mean, and the crazy part is none of it's local. Like people are on Netflix, video games, internet stuff. Like what competes with racing is the stuff that's in your living room now, right? And I don't know how you win that war. I really don't, because getting people who are introverted out of the house is an uphill battle. You know?
Yes, it is. I mean, it
seems like
one
our
of the
society
biggest
manufactures
challenges.
introverts. You know, but
it puts them in a comfort zone, and then I can speak from experience that sometimes you don't want to exist outside of that space. But I'll admit I'm one of those people that's an introvert, but racing is one of those places that, heck, that's where I'm good. That's where I'm comfortable. I can walk around and talk to random people because I know we're all like-minded and we all have the same interests. And that's one of those things that, man, that's just, I want to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, one of the weird things so we quit racing when Dad had a heart attack in 2008. And we went to the races maybe 4 or 5 times between then and when I started racing, like ever, which was in 2022, 3. So 23 is when I started racing.
A long time away from it.
It's a long time. And like, you know, I mean, part of it is, you know, when your life revolves around racing 3 times a week, racing kind of hurts to see, you know, like it like, we lived a mile and a half from McKean, and when McKean would race, it would like turn your stomach, you know, because you're not participating anymore.
You would hear it, but you weren't participating.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a weird weird thing. And if you would have talked to me 3 years ago, I would have probably told you, thank God we got out of racing. All it did was cost us money. Right. And now that I'm in racing again, that's all I think about. You know, it's like, it's wild how it just sucks.
What can I do? What this has to be done on the car. This has to be done. What can I change? How can I make it faster? How could my line have been different? It's a consumption.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it really does consume you too. It's like, it's a weird feeling, but I mean, I don't know. But I think back to the point, like what we started on, like I would like to see racing be a huge deal again. And, you know, maybe I'm doing the tracks a disservice, because in their defense, I'm in the pits now. I don't know what it's like in the stands. and what I'm remembering is what I saw as a little kid, and
well, and even at that, I'm going to say you were just saying something about McKean County that is kind of things I'm just hearing because when my dad was still racing the supers with you guys, which he quit racing much earlier in the 2000s at that level, but we didn't sit in the grandstands. Grandpa had his old Suburban that we were parked at the gate. They come off the track to go to the tech shed. So anytime a car come off the track to go to the tech shed, it literally drove around us to the tech shed. So I probably was 9 or 10 for the first time that I ever sat in the grandstands.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, in hindsight, by the time I was 13 or 14, I was in the pits all the time too. I mean, as soon as I was old enough to be there, that's where I was at. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. And I think that my problem is I find myself looking for I feel sometimes like we're watching the sport die a little bit, and we're watching the prices get outrageous. We're watching people get priced out. And like my brain kind of races like, what could people do? What could people do? What could people do? But like, I think at some point you just got to let it unfold. I think you got to find classes that cost less. You got to find a
100%.
way you got to find a way to pull the people who would otherwise be building streetcars into racing, right? And me and you have had a dozen conversations about that.
Yes, we have,
right?
And I'm sure we'll break into it here more and more.
Yeah. And I mean, I look at it like, what can you do to pull your shade tree mechanics, the guys who are building lifted trucks and sports cars and turbo Miatas and stuff like that? What can you do to drag them to the racetrack, right? How can you modernize racing in a way that it's something that your local car guy would want to be involved with again? Because the sport is in kind of it's almost like the chassis have become super modern, right?
Beyond.
And that's cool.
Beyond.
What's that?
They're beyond modern. Like this, and like you just said, a person that starts working on a car at their house, that's what the sport kind of originated as, I mean, we can go back pre-NASCAR days where it was people modifying their cars going, hey, I think my car is faster than yours. And then it evolved into this massive sport where it was still for the longest time people taking stock cars, knocking windows out of them, welding really crappy roll cages in them, and going racing. Or you had the jalopy classes, which were your stock cars that they cut the front clips off of them and did kind of whatever. And, they kind of turned into what the modifieds are. But as the stock cars evolved, as you said, modern frames, they don't resemble any form of street car. There's almost no relation to a street car at the highest level of racing now anymore.
Even your cars with quote unquote stock stubs, like your modifieds and stuff like that. I mean, there's chassis manufacturers and modifieds who are like bending the frame rails out and like doing all these weird front end geometry tricks to get the car to not behave like a stock stub race car, right? And I mean, and all that is great, and I love that innovation, right? And I think that we need that innovation, and I don't want to displace it. However, when it costs like 30 grand to build a really competitive crate car, like a modified or something, you're getting into weird territory here where it's like, who are you going to pull off the street to do this? Like, who's the kid out of high school that you're going to drag into this sport? I mean, is there any? I mean, his dad better have money, right?
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's the part where, and I feel like the track promoter can only take on so much, right? The track promoter can't make a class, make a rule set, build the car, build the motors, and also police the division, right? So you can't put all of it on the like if you take a snapshot of our cars, they feel like if you look at the motor, the drivetrain, we've made little improvements over the last 20 years or whatever, right? But ultimately, they're still carbureted. Some of the engine rules don't make a lot of sense to me. Like all these classes with a 358 cubic inch rule, right? I feel like you can spend more money on like, especially like a class like say you have a UMP modified class with a 358 engine rule. I mean, that doesn't really exist many places, right? But we got to take one car and kind of isolate it to have the conversation.
Let's go with the limited late model.
Okay, let's go with the limited late model.
Because you have in certain areas where it's a 358. You have in certain areas it's a 364. You can go all the way up to 364 cubic inch motor.
They do down in southern PA. It's starting to crop up. Is a 358 late model class is the quote unquote alternative.
Hummingbird and some of the tracks like that have it.
So hear me out though. Wouldn't you be further ahead to either limit the chassis or limit the tires or limit the shocks, limit the car in some exterior way where it's not going to benefit somebody to go build a freaking like 600 horsepower, 700 horsepower 358, right? Limit the car in some other way, whether you make a spec tire that's just hard as a rock or a shock package that's really basic, right? Limit the chassis in some way that makes going out and spending 50 grand on a motor unreasonable, right? And then you could do away with the cubic inch limit, right? And you could let guys build like mildly stroked motors because you can spend a lot of money on a 358, bro. You can spend a lot of money on one.
And I'm seeing that with the series we travel with.
On some level, it's almost more expensive than to just go build like a 430 or something.
Oh, because I know some guys that we race with, you could easily build a 430 motor for cheaper than a 364 cubic inch motor.
Yeah. I mean, and my 2 cents on it is like, if you limit, like say you limit the tires and the shocks, right? It's not going to benefit somebody to go buy an $80,000 motor. If anything, it's going to hinder them, right?
Yeah.
So that's my beef with the 358 rule is you're attacking the cause, not the problem. Do you see what I'm saying? Because we have these modern chassis now that really know how to put the power to the ground. They really know how to do everything right. And you've got to curb that problem, because the problem right now is that you have a chassis that'll do anything you want it to do, right? So the guy who does
take the air off of it.
Right. And then there's the guy who does spend 60 grand on a motor because he wanted to squeeze out an extra 10 horsepower. I mean, he's got the upper hand now because you never limited the chassis, and he's got an unlimited pocketbook, and he can just go out and dominate this limited late model class, right? And that's where my frustration is I feel like you could limit the class in other ways that would be cheaper to the racer, more economical for everybody involved, and make a hell of a lot more sense when it comes to your week-to-week racing, right? Because you would find a lot of guys winning races on budget builds if you had a rock hard spec tire, and maybe if they're running actual late model chassis, limit the travel or something. I mean, there's got to be something that you can do to limit the forward drive, limit the chassis, like
so down here
putting the power to the ground.
There's a new series that it's supposed to be older chassis, and it's actually an LS motor, and there's certain shocks and springs you're allowed to run on the car, and it's supposed to be they're wedge cars. They're supposed to be this cheaper option. That's great and all, but now you have guys that literally just went out and spent $15,000 on a body to make a wedge car.
Right.
So that's one of the other problems with that. But you also have the problem, unless you actually have people with the confidence to put a claim rule in, enforce a claim rule, and have individuals claim other people's shocks and whatnot. Right. People have found ways to manipulate sealed shocks.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you're always going to have the smoky eunuch type guy who, I mean, and really, you can almost manipulate any shock rule. You can go to, like, if you have Bilsteins making your spec shocks, you can just figure out what shock it is, order it custom valved, and if you're good enough with labels, I mean, you could probably just make the label, slap it on there, or buy the right shock and transfer the label over, right? That's been something I've thought about.
I've heard of people in other parts of the country that they're running spec series shocks that are supposed maybe an AFCO or whatever, but they're taking them and, you know, again, spec series shocks are now Penske internaled that weren't Penske's to start with.
Right. And yeah, that's, I mean, and I guess you're always going to have those guys. But one thing you can't do, like, so they can go out and pay for the spec shocks, but they can't make that tire softer. I mean, they can if they treat it, but I feel like that's an easily solvable problem, right? If you're running like I mean, I don't know what spec or what the Hoosier numbers are, right? But say you're running like an American Racer 55 or something on the right rear, right? That tire's gonna fucking suck, man. It's gonna suck, you know. It's a 30-lap race. It's never gonna warm up. I mean, it's gonna boil down to who did the most work during the week, and you can get your shocks all spec'd all you want, and you'll probably still have the upper hand. But that's a pretty good equalizer, right? And if you go above and beyond on 3 or 4 different aspects of the car to make it quote unquote spec, right? And you really focus on driving the cost down, I think that if you focus on driving the cost down and you make that the backbone of the class instead of an afterthought, right? Because I feel like a lot of these guys are like, they start off with the wrong basis when they're building a class, right?
Well,
they're like, how can I make a cheap late model?
And that's what crate racing was supposed to have been. But now look at it. You've got $120,000 late models running crate stuff.
Yep. The shock rules are wide open. Yep. I mean, it's just one of those things where, and you know, the crazy thing is they're not racing for that much money. It doesn't seem like
they're racing. I mean, no,
like that's where I struggle with it is we've turned crate lates and I've enjoyed some crate racing. I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on crate racing at all.
They can put on a good show at the right track.
They can put on a good show at the right track, and I don't begrudge the guys who do it either. They don't have a lot of other options. I mean, you could go super racing, but then you got to travel all over the place and try to chase whatever track is racing you guys this week. And crates have all but replaced supers at most places, and
they have.
That's a tough show.
You know, as we spoke, our fathers both raced super late models back in the day. Every track, I'm not going to say every track, but every track in our area raced supers weekly. Where we grew up, McKean County had so many, they ran consies.
Yeah, we had B mains weekly. We had consolations weekly. There was dash for caches. There was, I mean, it was like a whole thing. You know what I mean? It was like, it seemed like everywhere we went, there was a dash for cash, and there was like, everybody was redrawing. There was consolations. I mean, I remember like some of the premier guys in the region having a bad night and not making the show.
Oh yeah.
You know, and there was 10 guys who could win on any given Saturday. You know,
well, you even had the period where if you won the week before, the furthest forward you could start was 12 for the following week.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think all of those are real. I think when you add all those little rules together, right? Like if you win 2 in a row, you got to start 12th or back. When you like the spec tires, this is the direction I'd like to see racing go. I mean, you still need full-blown super late models. There might be a place for regular crate late models and all this. I think the crate modified class is a cool class, but I got to be honest, following them at the racetrack, that class looks like a bloodbath to me. I mean, there's so many cautions.
But I feel like that's always been modifieds, whether crates or whatnot, because I remember going to, back when they were E-mods, running E-mods at Little Valley, they had a 30-minute window because they couldn't stop wrecking each other. Anytime they were on the track, they had a 30-minute window to race.
Right. Yeah, you might be right. I mean, I don't remember ever actually paying attention to the modifieds when I was a kid, to be completely honest with you.
I mean,
they were just annoying because they were always right before the late models.
That, and they were out there always thinking they were cool, left tire as high as they could get it, going nowhere.
Yes, yeah.
I remember the first time I ever really remember watching modifieds, my grandmother took me to, she called it Tri-County or whatever it was up there, but Freedom, what's now Freedom, and I remember just under the pace laps getting annoyed with the cars because they were left tire up in the air going down. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing it?
Over here just making fun of my favorite class. I'm just over here. The 2 Woah Nellie races a year. And Jesse's over here like, this is the worst thing I have ever seen. And Jason's like, I agree. This is the worst. I'm paying attention. I'm still here.
Hey man, you're just supposed to be producing this. Quiet down.
We might have done that intentionally to piss you off, but you'll never know, dude. Me and Jason have telepathy over here. We're just mind reading each other. We're gonna go on a tangent about how terrible UMPs are, just to see how mad we can make Daniel.
The shelf hangers opinions are not the opinions of Woah Nellie Productions.
Yeah. Not only that, then you had the UMP, the E-mod drivers with their handlebar mustaches.
Here's what I will say though, dude. The one thing I do remember about modifieds that I really liked back in the day. So, I can't remember if it was Randy Hall and Rich Michaels that had or was it Andy Michaels?
Yeah,
Rich Michaels is a wrestler, right?
No, Andy Michaels. Andy Michaels is my. He runs crate late model. Used to run stock cars stuff, and then his brother Rich. It owns, there's partial owner of Ohio Valley Speedway and runs UMP cars very competitively.
Okay, he's the 17.
They're both 17X.
Okay, so I think it was him and Randy Hall that had like some just knockdown, drag out wars.
Oh yeah,
like, they would run into each other. I mean, they would door each other, and I mean, I remember being like on the edge of my seat watching that, and. You know, they may hate each other to this day. But
well, I mean, you want to know what we used to do with the modifieds? I
don't know that, right? What's that?
You know, modifieds at McKean County used to typically run after the late models, right? Sometimes, quite often. As far as I remember, we were typically already on our way out of the grandstands. One of the few races I do remember watching was watching Johnny Waters lapped like half the field one night there at McKean County. But I mean, honestly, growing up, it wasn't modifieds. We went to the races for late models.
To be fair, modifieds then and modifieds now are a totally different.
Oh my gosh, it's not even. They aren't even comparable. Well, I mean, late models aren't even comparable to back then.
Yeah, but I mean, and you know, full disclosure. We're kidding about how terrible UMPs are. That's a joke, dude. We're messing with Daniel.
Yeah.
He might not be, but I am. I enjoy watching the UMPs.
I'll cry.
All right, let's have it. I want you crying.
Podcast.
Before anybody yells at me on the internet, I thoroughly enjoy watching the UMPs race, okay?
Jesse's doing damage control because half the internet already hates him.
I'll admit this.
Yeah, Daniel's thoroughly annoyed the entire internet by making him think I'm a cocky prick, dude.
Wait, you aren't?
The mini late model king, and everybody's all heated about it.
He was trying to call this the king and the wrench, by the way.
Yeah, he's blaming me, but he is trying to name this podcast the King and the Wrench, dude.
Well, I mean, you've already ruined my reputation. I might as well lean into it, right?
Just like Zane Harvey can't drive a duck to water.
Yeah. I make one joke about how Zane Harvey's terrible. Now the whole internet thinks I want to fight him in public, dude. Good Lord. Dude's one of my homies, and everybody thinks we hate each other. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What were we talking about? We're talking about like spec shocks and stuff.
I don't know. Hard tires, spec shocks, hard springs, soft right rears. I don't know.
You gotta soften up the right rear, dude.
You gotta stiffen up the right rear, dude. You gotta stiffen it.
Take some more spring rate out of that right rear. Come on, bring it on down.
If you're running a race car, if you're running a race car, and it don't matter what race car you're running, you find the hardest right rear spring you can find, right? Just go to your favorite spring manufacturer, right? And look for the size spring you're looking for, and just scroll all the way down to the bottom. All the way. It might say 2,000 pounds. Who knows? That's not your problem. Order that sumbitch. Put it on the right rear. You'll love it, dude. It's going to be a good time. Go fast as all hell, dude. That's Zane Harvey, dude.
Oh, gosh.
Zane just scroll here to defend himself.
You just scroll right past those like 150s, the 170s. You don't want those. You want to go
stick that right rear in the dirt, boy. Come on.
Find one that's at least 4 digits, okay, and put that some bitch in the right rear. Watch your car grow wings in the middle of the corner, dude.
Yeah, it'll grow wings. It'll look like Kyle out there going airplane mode.
You'll be out there doing it for Dale, and you'll thank me later, bud. That's how you're gonna race. But oh shit!
Oh man!
But
no,
that's like horrible. Another
terrible advice.
Dude, we have so many stupid running jokes that nobody's gonna get. They're gonna be like, somebody's gonna be like on Saturday at the racetrack. But you hear what that Isadore kid said? That Isadore kid said to put a 2,000-pound spring in the right rear. He must be stupid.
And you know, Jesse, half of the guys that have been following you through this entire mini late model journey, they're probably right now at listening to this, doing what you just did.
Hyper's website.
Yeah,
they're scrolling through Hyper's website. Like, it only goes up to 500. What do I do?
What does Swiss Springs has? What does Swiss Springs have?
I need a 1,000-pound right rear. Let me call AFCO real quick. Do you guys have any 10-inch right rears that are 1,000-pound spring rate?
No, screw that. Get a full 14-inch. Get as much load into it as possible.
Yeah, we're only allowed to run 10s, bud. 14's illegal.
Well,
don't be telling people to do illegal stuff.
Get some load into it.
All right.
It'll compress the 10 inches.
Hey, you'll worry about that at the tech shed.
Real talk, though. How do you put, like, on our little baby, like, Bilstein coilovers, if you had 1,000-pound right rear, all you got is that little aluminum shock collar? How you put a turn in that thing, dude?
Oh, have you ever seen a spanner?
Yeah. I'm gonna need a custom-made, like, ratchet wrench spanner to put a turn in my 1,000-pound right rear.
You'll get it. Man. You'll get it eventually.
I'll get her eventually. But yeah, oh well.
You guys ready to wrap? We've been talking for about, a little under an hour. I don't know, however this gets cut up.
Well, however you decide to do it, yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this absolute adventure. The absolute journey that is the shelf hangers with Jesse and Jason.
I hate that name, dude. So
you know
much.
What?
This podcast is so stupid, dude. I hate you. I hate you. You are the worst. The shelf. I hate you, dude. Go ahead. Finish your stupid monologue, dude. You're like, dude, you are a scumbucket, dude. We had like 5 solid names and we sounded like fucking grown-ups, okay? And then you're like, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to call it the Shelf Hangers. Sponsored by I'm a Moron, dude.
Oh, boy.
My bad, dude. Go ahead. Finish your cool
No,
story.
it's all right, dude. Sounds like you haven't hung a shelf in a while. It just seemed like you're a little worked up.
I'll hang your fucking shelf right now, dude.
Oh, no.
Food shelves presented by Woah Nellie.
Dude shelves, brothers.
Dude shelves presented by Man Wipes, dude. Oh.
Yeah.
Daniel, you talk and this shit goes off the rails.
You're so mean to everybody, dude.
It's you. You're the
you
mean
ruin our
one.
podcast name, okay, by calling it the Shelf Hangers. Nobody even knows what you're talking about. Nobody. Oh my god, this is like an unintelligible podcast.
Just this ending. Just this
So
ending.
many
You guys
people
had
are gonna
about
be listening to
58
this.
minutes.
They're like, "What are they saying?" The dude shelves, man wipes, shelf hangers. Oh man!
All right, well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening to this show. It's the Shelf Hangers or whatever. Even though Jesse hates it, that's why we're keeping it.
I hate you, not it.
Shelf
I hate
hangers on
you.
dirt, brother.
You are a degenerate. You're the worst.
If I ever go missing, I'm in a backyard in Smithport, probably next to some blown out mini late model tires.
You might be into tires.
I'm gonna use the tires to burn you down, dude. I'm gonna throw you in a burn barrel and throw some tires on top, dude. And then I'm gonna put a shelf on the top, just as a final fuck you, dude.
Well, this is a great ending segment.
After I burn your corpse, I'm gonna wipe down the barrel with
God.
dude wipes, dude.
Well, if everybody thinks Jesse's now a murderer on top of a tool.
All hail the king.
Oh,
We'll see
my
you,
God,
everybody.
I hate